this is not just game of the year for me. This is one of the greatest sequels to a game ever made, because there is so much that Insomniac took from what made the first game amazing, what made Miles Morales amazing. You're playing Peter and you're playing Miles. You can switch between them whenever you want. Spider-Man 2 is hands down the greatest superhero game ever made. It is one of the coolest games I've ever played.
The game is very familiar, but it also reinvents a lot of that familiarity. It gives you like this grounded approach that you can pick up this controller, go into it, start swinging, start flying, and then give you everything else on top of that. And for me right now, it's like hitting that game of the year. We get to play a character that's beloved to us in such a fashion.
Insomniac Spider-Man 2 is one of the best games I've ever had the chance of playing. The experience that I had with it, the way that I played this game, the longevity of what this game can hopefully bring. This is why you buy a PS5. This is what Insomniac has built towards. This is what Sony and PlayStation have built towards to make the most immersive and most captivating game experience that you possibly can have.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast spoiler-free review of Marvel Spider-Man 2. My name is Daniel, and joining alongside me, swinging through the city of New York City, is Shahbaz.
What's up? I was on the I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, what's my Spider-Man hello? And then I just immediately went to Budweiser. Oh, I went Venom. Sorry, you're right. I went to Venom. Look, I got
there. We go. It didn't. It didn't take too long. We're about 30 seconds into this episode, and already Shay has done, pulled up all this classic Venom speak. And Anthony, how you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing well. I'm here. Hello.
You sound so excited to talk about.
I am excited.
Spider-Man 2.
What do you want me to do? I can't swing on these walls. They're too expensive.
Yeah, it's very true. Spider-Man 2. This has been a game that we have been waiting a very, very long time to talk about. We had the opportunity to go to LA a month ago, literally a month ago today as we're recording this. I was there getting hands-on with the game for the first time, talking to some of the developers. And here we are now, a month later, talking to it. The three of us have all platinumed the game, and we're going to be giving you our spoiler-free review of Spider-Man 2. So if you're watching this, if you're new to the movie podcast, hi, we're so happy that you're here. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you're looking forward to on this episode of the movie podcast. Shay has balloons. Clearly, Spider-Man needs to go catch those balloons.
Did you see what just happened there? I did not expect that. I thought that was only with like FaceTime. I didn't think it would do it here. That's so cool.
Did you throw up a peace sign? Is that why?
I threw up a peace sign.
Oh, there we go. Wow, look at the
budget.
Oh my God, there's confetti. There's so much going on right now.
Look at that thumbs up just went up too.
No, for the fans of Spider-Man.
You're ruining my video right now. You're literally like.
I love Spider-Man. Look at that.
No, but it makes sense though. It makes sense because obviously, if you go back, if you're a longtime player of Spider-Man games, you had to go get my balloon in Spider-Man 2, and now
Spider-Man
here
2.
we are releasing all of these balloons out to the world. I want to say thank you to our friends at PlayStation Canada for providing us with codes for the game. We absolutely love working with them. We have some great content planned in the future, so make sure you stay tuned for all of that and more. But like I said, this is the movie podcast. We cover reviews, interviews, discussions on all the latest movies and series and games. We have some great video game reviews out. We have an interview with senior art director Jacinda of this very game. So make sure you go back, a month's worth of episodes and go check that out, because we have a great discussion about what it takes to bring a game like this together. We had a great conversation, so we're really proud of that. So make sure you go watch that. Go watch that video. Go give it some love. A lot of you have already. But I can't believe we got to talk about Spider-Man 2 today. But before we do, I just want to say, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Letterboxd, wherever you follow us, wherever you are. The movie podcast is there. We're the best place for entertainment. So make sure you stay here, stick around, and subscribe. We love what we're doing. We want to keep doing more for you.
Stick it right here. Spider-Man
2 releases exclusively on PS5 on October 20th. And I cannot believe we're about to start talking about it. And I think the hardest thing going back a month when I got to play it, because I was so in shock of playing it, it's like it almost like didn't stay with me because I was just so overwhelmed. And now that we get to all kind of do it together, and now having all of us just recently platinumed it, we're going to stay spoiler free, of course. But let's get right into it. We're each going to kind of take about a minute or two, give our overall reactions to the game, And then we're going to dive in deep into the gameplay mechanics, what it's like to get to Platinum Trophy, what abilities and suits and all that look like. So stay tuned. We're going to have a great episode for you. Shahbaz, start us off. Give us your first reactions to Marvel's Spider-Man 2.
Everything that Insomniac has built so far has led to this game. This is their crowning achievement. This is a crowning achievement for the PS5. Insomniac has always been a leader in innovation when it comes to not even just utilizing the hardware for its best uses, but also just storytelling, narrative, everything that they kind of put in. They do such a phenomenal job with it. Insomniac Spider-Man 2 is one of the best games I've ever had the chance of playing. This is them taking every single piece of feedback that they received for the first game and literally resolving it. They've gone back and focused on so many elements of what made Spider-Man 1 a really awesome game with some issues into a game where all that has been resolved. Does this mean that this game is perfect? No, there are still some things that we definitely want to talk about, but the experience that I had with it, the way that I played this game, the longevity of what this game can hopefully bring, I absolutely love, and I had such a great time with it. I loved swinging through the streets. I loved saving people. I love the expanded map. I love the performances. I love what they were able to do with the hardware itself, especially the DualSense, which we're going to get into for sure. We're going to talk, I know, a lot more about how it feels in your hand and how they've incorporated to make it more of an immersive experience. We'll talk about performance and all the other great things. And obviously, we're going to talk about the suits. Now, the changes that this game has come with are really, really interesting. And I think it took me a little bit longer to adjust to them than I probably would have liked. But what that kind of gave me was a new feeling of a game that sometimes sequel games don't really bring you. They kind of feel like an extension of the first game. While there are some elements for sure in this game that do feel like an extension, because a lot of the core fundamental things have changed, it really feels like a nice restart to the whole franchise. And I absolutely loved it. I had a great time and I cannot wait to talk about it more.
I still can't get over, like, when we were playing this game, it was still something that, you know, we'd do something and then we'd message each other, be like, hey, did you see this? Did you just do this? Did you see how it feels like to
We wouldn't do it like that
city?
though, Daniel. We would do it like coyly, like, hey man, I don't know what part you're at right now, but
what's going on?
Did
near
that
him right
thing
now, Anthony?
happen?
What's going on with you? Shay?
Yeah. There's a lot of you know, innuendo to certain things that are happening on this game, but without revealing too much.
Did you guys think of me every time you turned on, you know, your web wings? Did you go like, vroom? Like, did you think of me every time you pressed?
I did it every time. Every time.
Good.
No, I thought of like whenever I hit someone, I thought of you.
Oh,
or you know, like, you know, when you
that's okay
back.
too.
Yes.
When I would throw them and like slam their head into the wall. Yeah, that's when I would think of you.
Yeah.
Listen, I know Spider-Man doesn't kill, but like,
this
there's some
kills.
questionable.
man,
there's some questionable moments in this one for sure.
Questionable? Daniel, these people are dead. These
Yeah.
people are dead.
These poor people.
We would talk about how like their bones would be mush because just the
like
impact
their
of
soup
these
on the
hits.
inside now.
Yeah.
I think the developers at NetherRealm are like, whoa, we can't even do some of the stuff that they're showing in Mortal Kombat.
How'd you guys get away with that? That's so good. Anthony, please start us off. Give us your first reaction to Marvel Spider-Man 2.
Look, I'm a simple guy. When it comes to video games, the biggest thing is, can you keep my attention? And Spider-Man 2, throughout the whole gameplay for me, kept my attention. I just came off playing Assassin's Creed, and I really felt that the story was the biggest drawback of that game. And getting into Spider-Man 2, my eyes were completely glued to the story that was unfolding. And for someone who is pretty well versed in the Spider-Man universe and all the characters and the storylines he's gone through, I'm so happy that we were able to get the first time in a really long time, or I don't even think ever, 2 Spider-Man happening at the same time in New York City, and to tell a story that's giving you both of their personal journeys in this game with different villains and different story arcs for them. For me, the story is what draws Spider-Man 2 out. I really, really love Kraven as the villain, and you know, the game is very familiar, but it also reinvents a lot of that familiarity. It gives you like this grounded approach that you can pick up this controller, go into it, start swinging, start flying. You know what you're doing, especially if you've come from the first game, and then give you everything else on top of that. The UI is fantastic. The animation's fantastic. The fighting capabilities are fantastic. And when you get the black suit, it blows your mind that the amount of animation and character interaction with the symbiote is happening all at the same time. You're just like glued. Your eyes are just stuck to that window. But I'm very, very happy with the gameplay. I think for me, there's not a lot of issues that I experienced. I had a lot of fun with it. And for me right now, it's like hitting that game of the year. And I don't like giving out game of the year, but it's a really, really fun game. It's a really innovative game. It's all taking place with Spider-Man. And that's something like you dream of doing or playing as a kid. Like, this is the first time or the second time, but really well done. We get to play a character that's beloved to us in such a fashion.
It's funny you mentioned Game of the Year, Anthony, because I didn't think it was possible to have a video game come out this year that would take away what I felt was locked in for Tears of the Kingdom to be my Game of the Year. And Spider-Man 2 did that. And just like Tears of the Kingdom expands on everything that makes Breath of the Wild amazing, it expands the Spider-Man lore, the story, the abilities, the characters to a place that this is not just Game of the Year for me. This is the best superhero game ever made. This is one of the greatest sequels to a game ever made. Because there is so much that Insomniac took from what made the first game amazing, what made Miles Morales amazing, and they've blended these two characters together. You're playing Peter and you're playing Miles. You could switch between them whenever you want. You're having a game that feels like the definitive Spider-Man experience. And just like what you said, Anthony, like you're getting a story that's interweaving who these characters are, and you're telling a story of them together. You know, we love Into the Spider-Verse. We love Across the Spider-Verse. Those are real gems for us. But those are very Miles-focused stories as much as there are other Spider characters in it. What Spider-Man 2 does so well is that it balances both these character stories. It's an evolution of what's come before, and then it just goes crazy with what it gives you, what traversal feels like, what swinging feels like. It really is taking advantage of the power of the PS5 and giving you this giant map. It's giving you this giant playground where you could just swing around, but you'll probably be gliding around mostly, and you could upgrade. You are flying through the city. You could literally, when we first saw, the super slingshot move, when we first saw that, I remember thinking, oh, I hope that's not just specific areas that you could do that. You can literally just press L1 and X anywhere you are, and you get launched. No matter where you are in the game, like you'll find a way to launch and just go flying. And that sense of fluidity is just constant through the game. And that's not even talking about, I'm not even talking about the story yet. This is one of the best Spider-Man stories I've experienced. We are eating so well as Spider-Man fans. You look at what we've gotten in the last 7 years with this character, with Tom Holland showing up in the Avengers films and Civil War and all of that. Then you get the Spider-Verse films, and now we're getting this trilogy of games right now that Insomniac is only beginning to scratch the surface of what their potential is. And to know that we're going to be getting a Wolverine game from them, from the developers that gave us one of the most enjoyable games to play, one of the coolest games that I've ever played. I am just in awe of what they were able to accomplish. I am so excited to start a new game, to go through this experience again, to start the story, because it is so damn good, and you owe it to yourself to play it this year.
I've read a lot of Spider-Man books, and the character is always alone in New York City, even though there's Avengers and Doctor Strange, and he's teamed up with Wolverine and Deadpool and all these. There's never been a moment where two Spider-Men were able to take care of the city, and even for Peter to have someone to reflect on and someone to have as an ally in this world that's very similar to him. And I think that's so different than what we've gotten in the comic books. I wish we got those earlier on with Peter Parker, because it was always Peter Parker as Spider-Man, but introducing Miles Morales, and even in the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales is on his own because he is the only Spider-Man in his universe, but giving these two characters their own universe together and giving each other as a best friend, in a sense, it's so different, because it's like, hey man, I can bounce off you, you could bounce off me, and we can have this really cool journey that I never thought of wanting when I was reading a Spider-Man comic.
Now, I'm curious for both of you. What were your, before we kind of dive into what the story is all about, what were your fears going into this game? I'm curious. What were you worried about? Was there something? I know we were very excited, obviously, to play it, but did you have any fears or worries going into this game that you were like, you know what? Is this going to be more of the same, or is it going to miss this or do this? I'm just curious. Shay, I'd love for you to start us off if you have anything.
Yeah, I think the initial fear, kind of always when you're going into a sequel, is this going to be more of the same? And I think that was kind of like just the overall arching fear. The smaller stuff in the middle was kind of like, okay, you know, we have Venom that's been introduced, but we haven't in media, you know, besides the cartoons and the TV shows and the comics, really gotten a good Venom. Like, I'm no offense to anyone who loves the Tom Hardy films, that to me isn't really Venom. And also in Spider-Man 3, we got such a Venom, whatever you want to call that, really. So my fear, I think, was kind of going into this, like,
I mean, you're not a fan of Topher Grace, you know, of my Spidey senses tingling, if you know what I mean.
he spent the whole time, you know, with the whole mask off. Those were some of the fears that I kind of had. Like, okay, we have Venom in this trailer, we have Venom in here. How impactful will that be? And obviously, we're not going to get into spoilers, but let's just say I was pleased. I was more than pleased, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Anthony, how about yourself?
Yeah, I would exactly like Shay said. It's are you giving me the same game as Miles Morales or the Spider-Man 1? How do you approach Venom? How do you, like, where's the story leading to these characters and the overall experience? So there was a lot of, you know, journey to the unknown with a character like that, especially when it includes Venom, because when you think of Venom, you think of a very iconic character to Spider-Man, and you want that character to have his moment or their moment in time. And, you know, with Tom Hardy's Venom, it's not the same. And I'm very close to the Venom from the comics and even the Spider-Man series, the TV series, the animated series, where they did a really good job of incorporating his character into that world. I was a little worried that, okay, well, how does Insomniac take such an iconic character and bring him into this world and actually give I'm going to call them, give them that spotlight that it deserves, as well as give Peter, Miles, and whoever else we interact with their time to shine on the screen. It is very much like a movie where you need to approach it with great writing and telling that story and getting everyone's time to shine on screen and incorporating it into a game.
You know, it's great that you just mentioned story and great writing. I think let's dive into the story of this game. Obviously, I want to reiterate, we are not going to spoil any characters that show up in this game, any big boss battles, but we will say this game does start off with a big fight, and it does start off with Peter and Miles, you know, going to stop this character. And right from the get-go, the story just thrusts you into it and is teaching you things on the fly, which is great. It's a great reminder of, you know, yeah, this is how you play the game, but also you have two Spider-Man that you're going to be able to switch between in the story. And I think it's a great introduction to who these characters are. And an overarching theme throughout the entirety of this game, which I think is redemption, which I think is something that, especially, you know, in a couple weeks from now, when we talk about the spoilers for this game, we'll be talking about redemption a lot. So we kick things off right away. Big battle, big moment in New York City. And then from there, it almost pivots. And I think this is what's been really interesting. What we've been seeing from PlayStation Studios is that we've been getting a lot of games that are taking a page from like the Naughty Dog book, where we have like, okay, you know what? Let's slow things down. Let's have these human moments. And I'm immediately, you know, thinking about the beginning of Uncharted 4, where you have like Nathan Drake walking around his house, taking the little the Nerf gun, shooting things in his attic. Like, there's moments that are very reminiscent of that in Spider-Man 2. That's like, yeah, like let's establish what's going on. And again, this is what we've known already from the trailers, you know, that Peter has moved into Aunt May's house. He's there with MJ. They're living their life together. You know, they're trying to move forward in their life together, which is great. And then obviously we have, you know, this big bad Kraven. And Anthony, you mentioned Kraven earlier in your reaction, and I think it was great that you did, because what an incredible villainous performance we've gone from Kraven. And I'm curious for you, because I know you're huge, like all of us, but I know you're the Spider-Man comic purist. What did you think of this interpretation of Kraven?
I loved it. I thought they did a really good job of getting just his presence on screen and his world, like the Kraven world and everything that he brings to New York. They did such a fantastic job of incorporating it, like the idea of the hunt, the idea of this man who is on a mission to find something that can challenge him. And I think that was, Kraven has always been that character. He was always looking for someone who's his equal or beyond, that he can either kill or be killed. There was never really a bad moment with Kraven. He wasn't looking for uranium, or he wasn't trying to rob a bank. He was really looking for a fight, and they did
for an equal,
exactly. And they did such a great job of taking his character and putting him on screen. He's so menacing, but he's so like meticulous and intellectual. There's things that you learn about Kraven where he understands his studies, or the people that he's about to hunt, and how he approaches them. He learns languages. He gets back into their history. He knows everything about you before you even meet him. Things like that, as you go through the story and uncover why he's doing what he's doing, it just feels like, man, this is such a great adaptation of the character that I've been used to in the comics. And there's a lot of like hidden secrets and hidden gems that you will start to unravel with Kraven and everything else that's tied to Kraven, and where his character goes in this game.
I love that you touch upon a lot of that, Anthony, where, Kraven is just ruthless. I think something that this game I didn't expect it to do with the story was, and maybe I should have expected it, because obviously based on the characters that we're getting, it goes really dark. Like, it goes to a point where I was like, oh, can Insomniac do this? Is this allowed?
Is this game not rated M?
Right? Like you kind of wonder, like you're at a point of they do some stuff in this game that I just did not expect for it to be allowed or even show up in Marvel. Because sometimes I think we get painted, or Marvel gets painted with this Disney brush, and when we see something that changes it or challenges it, it really just throws you for a loop. And this game does that a lot.
It does. And I think, shout out to Jim Pirri, who plays Kraven. You may also know him as, he's done a bunch of roles. He was also in Across the Spider-Verse. He did voices, but he played, for the Friends fans out there, he played Sergey, the episode with, where Phoebe's on the date with the person from that other country that she's trying to find on the map. Very deep cut, I know, but like, it's just interesting going through his IMDb. It's like, oh, there he is. But yeah, Kraven is menacing as hell. You feel terrified anytime he is on screen, because he has that unpredictability. You don't know what he's going to do, because he's 5 steps ahead of you. And he reminds me a little bit about how, talking about Tom Hardy again, how Tom Hardy played Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, where you have this just massive presence on screen. Literally, his bicep is the size of my head. He just feels massive, and he's such an intimidating force, but he's also could back it up with his mind. And the fact that he's just so sadistically like addicted to having his hunt and having like these devotees of him as hunters. You're going to fight these hunters a lot around New York City. So get ready to fight them a lot, because they're a lot more challenging than just people breaking into a bank or breaking into a store. These hunters will fight back, and you're going to have to parry. You're going to have to dodge a lot more. And I think for me, because I've been so used to playing the game on ultimate difficulty the last 5 years, we all play this in the amazing mode, right? So like, I guess like this the medium difficulty level. It was interesting even then, having some moments where like, oh wow, these guys are fighting back a lot more than I'm used to from playing the last 2 games. So there's
this game
some
is
really
tougher.
Tough matches.
This game is harder.
It's a lot tougher. And what I really like, and again, we're going to talk more about the abilities and all of that stuff later on. What I really like is that, you get the abilities to kind of match that, and to have to be a lot more meticulous in how you're playing things. But continuing on with the story, we get introduced to a lot more characters this time around. Harry Osborne is someone that was introduced to us in the first game via those scientific missions that you do on the rooftops, which always made me laugh because I'm like, how does he know Peter's going to get to these if they're on the rooftops? You know, does he know he's Spider-Man? I don't know. In this game, you know, it's known. We've known since the LA demo that we did that Harry does know who Spider-Man is. And it's just interesting seeing their dynamic together. I really love Harry's performance in this game. I think he has such a great arc of who his character is and his relationship. You believe that he's friends with MJ and Peter for a long time. And I love that this game does do some flashbacks as well, too, which really brings the story together as you're going through the entirety of it. Again, it's so hard not to talk about story and talk about plot points, but just know that Harry and Peter have a great relationship, that you believe that they've been friends all these years. And I was also worried that it was going to feel a little bit like Amazing Spider-Man, the movie, where it was like, oh God, Harry's here now and, you know, they want to work together, but it's like this weird thing now Harry's mad at him. It's like, it's not like that. And the storytelling, obviously, the dynamic works so well. You believe that they're friends and you will fall in love with who Harry is in this game because I think he's just such an incredibly written character. And his actor who plays him, let me just get his name here, Graham Phillips, does so much with the performance capture of who his character is. You're going to fall in love with who Harry is in this game too.
There never was a disconnect with Harry when he's introduced to us in the game. You really felt that Peter and Harry have been together for a very long time, and during that Spider-Man 1 Miles Morales time period, he was off and doing his own thing. That was the idea. That's just felt like, okay, it was maybe a year or two that he was not around Peter. But when they are together, there is this chemistry that, okay, yeah, they've known each other since elementary school. Norman knows Peter. They know the family. It's a very close-knit community of Peter's we'll say Peter's family and Peter's friends and loved ones. And there's a lot of I would say there's flashback sequences that kind of build that trust in the gameplay and in you, and earning that, okay, yeah, they were friends. They were partners before we are introduced to him now.
And it's great seeing like Norman Osborn shows up a lot more in this game as well too. Obviously, he's someone that was in the first game a bunch, obviously teasing that, you know, he's the mayor. He is the antagonist to Otto Octavius. So seeing him in a different light in this game, which is interesting because obviously, you know, he doesn't know Peter Spider-Man, but Peter's seeing him through the lens of being Harry's friend. So Norman in this game feels a lot more softer because he just cares about his son. He's just happy that his son is back and that he's, you know, living his life and he's here again with his friends, and they just want to, change the world. They want to save the world, right? And I think that's what's such a great dynamic. And seeing Norman through a different light in this game has been really fun too.
You've also seen a lot of upgrades to I must say upgrades. I literally mean it. Like you look at someone like Mary Jane, who in the last game, her story was definitely there, but she was kind of like, okay, I'm just building a story. There's a lot more involved, like you mentioned, Daniel, about you know where they are in their relationship, and it ties so well to Harry's introduction back into this world. Every single character that gets introduced, while you may think, oh, okay, might be a really loose thread, by the end of the game, everyone's threads are so strong. The web of people in this game really fits and it really, really works. And there isn't really a character that you dislike or you're like, I think they could have done without this. Like every single character works. By the time you roll credits, you won't have regretted a single character interaction or moment playing or whatever that you did.
Now, we've spoken a lot about Kraven. We've spoken about Harry. Let's talk about the big symbiote in the room. Let's talk about Venom. And of course, we are staying spoiler free. Who's Venom? We're not talking about it today, but Venom as a character fighting against Venom, absolutely terrifying. A force, really scary because it's not just like Venom that you're going to be fighting against. It is just like you're fighting this symbiote, and it's very scary. And I'm just curious, please, whoever wants to jump in next, what was your experience when you first kind of came across Venom and that initial fight with them? Because obviously we know Venom's in the game. We've seen him. We know we're going to fight Venom.
For my end here, it was terrifying. Like you mentioned, it was very scary. it's so hard to, like, I'm trying to talk about it but also not spoil anything, because while we know the characters in it, there's just so much more to this character than you're kind of knowing about. And I think you see the power of that character. You're fighting a lot of Spider-Man villains in this game, and when you fight Venom especially, that's the one where you're kind of like, how am I going to be able to? And Tony Todd, who, I mean, is a just frightening voice.
Venom.
That was a pretty, I don't know if it was as good as mine though, but it was pretty good. I'll be honest with you.
That was it.
I mean, you know, we recognize Tony Todd from the Candyman days, and from Final Destination. I always remember him as like the one of the morticians, or death, or whatever you want to call him. And in this, his voice fits so well, his deliveries fit so well, the way he yells, the way he says everything. I felt genuine just goosebumps and chills throughout the experience. Venom is very terrifying, as it's always been. Fighting him in this game is just even more traumatizing. Obviously, we know that there's the sounds that Venom hates, so you're constantly looking out for those kind of moments. Like, okay, can I trigger this? Can that create a sound ripple to affect him? There's a lot of these great things that Insomniac has done about Venom, and they've made my favorite Venom that has existed right now, besides the cartoon.
I will say there's a lot of lead up to Venom. So it's not Venom that just shows up. So there is a lot of game and story that you're going to go through to get to that point. And when you get to that point, it, like I said with other things, it's so well earned and it's so well orchestrated. Insomniac is really diving into telling a story and pacing it out. And when you get to the point where you are playing Venom, you feel like there's this, you know it's happening. And when you get to it, you're so excited to finally meet up. And now you have two Spider-Man who interact with Venom. That is a different approach, because there's always been Peter, right? It's always been Peter Parker who faces Eddie Brock, and that was the world of Venom, and how he was on the top of the cross, and he's hugging it, and it's raining and all that. And there are parts of that they really pull from the comics. But yeah, he's terrifying, but he's also, I have a lot of empathy for Venom, because he is that hero that is an anti-hero. He's not bad, he's not good, but sometimes he leads into bad things. You just want to give him a hug,
a big goopy hug, you know?
And symbiote hug.
You know, would I love to one day play a game where I am completely venomized and I play that version of Venom, like the jacked Venom,
and play as Venom? Yeah,
like I would love that,
in a whole game. Yeah,
in a whole game. That's something that I think I would enjoy, because I like the character, and I think a lot of people like the character, because you have Tom Hardy's Venom, which is making tons of money. He is a really likable character. He is funny. He's not funny in this one, but there are moments where
he's a little scary in this one.
He's a little scary.
I'll be honest, it's terrifying. Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed that part of this story, because it felt like it was really well paced and well earned. And when you got to it, you're like, bam, and there's so much story after that.
It's a deep game, right? And that's the thing, right? We're going to talk about obviously the platinum and everything like that, but I would say that this game probably, I feel like I beat it. I rolled credits on it around 24 hours, and that was me doing a lot of side missions, which we're going to talk about soon. So like, it is a lengthy game, and you see why, because there's so much story that you're going to get. And I want to talk about, we spoke about Venom, obviously, but let's talk about the symbiote. Let's talk about Peter in this game getting the symbiote. We know he's battling with it. We hear how menacing and how scary he starts to become, because obviously the symbiote will start to mess with his mind and make him be darker. And I think Yuri Lowenthal's performance is so strong in this game because of that. Because, we've seen in that moments from the PlayStation Showcase back in June, where Miles is like, man, like, Lizard has big teeth, man. He's like, so do I. And like, it's so easy to come off cheesy. We've seen very cheesy Venom or symbiote Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3, very campy. But this Spider-Man, this Peter Parker, you believe that he's going down a dark path. And there's stuff, obviously, that transpires in this game that really brings him down that dark path. And I think Yuri's performance and how they wrote this Spider-Man, this Peter story is so strong. And I really loved how he's battling with it internally. Like, you feel like it's easy for me going into this, like, oh man, like I don't want to see the same type of story that we've seen before where the symbiote's going to affect him, and we've seen this done a million times and animated in the films and all of that. But they really take it down a unique path, and I think again it's a testament to the writers at Insomniac, where you tell a very strong story with Peter battling his inner demons that way.
I think one of the things that, we've touched on a lot, and Anthony, especially you, have touched on a lot, is everything feels earned. And especially with Peter becoming more in tune with the symbiote suit, it is so earned. You see the natural progression, because a lot, like I know you, Daniel, you said about 24, 25 hours for you to roll credits. I took a lot longer, because there's just moments where I was just for a couple hours just swinging and interacting with the city.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it was 32 hours for everything.
I did about 35, yeah.
32 hours for me, because I was doing all the side missions as well too before I hit credits. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And when you're just playing the game, not story-wise, not even anything in those times, you start to see that progression of that character occur. So I really encourage, and I know that in our interview with Jacinda, she mentioned to you, Daniel, that really focus on the side quests as well, because they are just as important as the main story. And that really does help. I know we're going to get to that in a bit. That really does help really push these characters forward a lot. It's so interesting, because he just gets meaner and meaner and meaner and more just distant and distant and distant. And I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but I start to like really just feel like weird playing as Peter at some point, because I'm like, oh, like this is kind of
I'm gonna switch to Miles.
Like I don't like he just like he sucks right now. Like he's such an asshole, I don't agree with what you're doing, but yeah.
He becomes like a dictator.
Mean, man?
He does. Yeah. He has like a dictator ideology in his head. Again, this Venom is a very the approach to the symbiote suit is very familiar, but now you've incorporated all these other characters that when Peter Parker originally got it, they weren't around. So there's so many different paths that will happen with your character, because Miles will notice, like, why is Peter so aggressive, and Mary Jane will notice stuff, and there's just really creepy sequence that happens in Aunt May's house that it just becomes like a haunted. I'm guessing they orchestrated it that way because it's happening during Halloween. This game is coming out during a very spooky season, so it was a very spooky sequence and a storyline that I was like, Bumba, like I did not expect him to go down that route, because a lot of times when you see Venom, he's like, or when you see Peter interact with this symbiote Venom, he eventually gets it off, right? Like he willpowers it off. This one is a little bit different, because he feels like he's doing good with it, but there's also like this menacing, maybe like subconsciously, this is what Peter really wants to do, have this immense power that he doesn't have. And when you look at Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and you can even compare him to Miles, he's not the greatest Spider-Man. I think Miles has so much more potential for being better, because he has the ability to be invisible, and he has all this electricity power with the Venom burst and all that. Peter's just, I got Spider-Man powers. I can swing and I can punch really hard and I can do the backflips. But there's nothing else that makes him special other than maybe his character and the comedy that he brings. But I felt like maybe that's something that he really wanted that he didn't have, that maybe Miles has.
Because he got those abilities now, right?
Right? So there's little things like that change the whole dynamic of, oh, he's eventually going to get off this symbiote suit. But, how he gets it off, and even how he gets it, is so different than what you would expect.
There's a lot of improvements this time around with Spider-Man 2. There is so much more you could do as Peter and as Miles, and the fact that you could switch between them at any time. You could just pull up the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app, which was introduced to us in Miles Morales. Now we could just like pull it up to swipe on the D-pad. I believe is swipe right on the D-pad, and you could just hold square, and you could switch between Peter or Miles. Another thing that I noticed too, and I know that we've all experienced it, is that if you have a main story mission, when you approach that story mission, which is something I kind of didn't like that the game did. As soon as you get close to the vicinity of whatever story mission it was, it would be like switching to Peter or switching to Miles. I'm like, no, I was just swinging through here. I didn't want to start this mission yet, but I get it's like you could always abandon the mission, but it's just funny that that was something that did happen. But we'll talk a little bit more about some of our criticisms in a little bit. But let's talk about gameplay. Shay, start us off. How did it feel to be Miles, to be Peter, to be Spider-Man this time around?
You know, one of the things that I kind of touched upon in my initial, like my first reaction there was, it took me a little bit of time to kind of adjust to this game, because initially I kind of found it a bit slower, like the combat and the fighting style and the way you do combos now with the L1 and R1. I found it a little slow, and I was like, I don't know if I'm in love with this yet. I don't know if because in the first Spider-Man game, I'd go in and it was like I was solving a Rubik's Cube. I was just like, and everything would just be done right away. Like I would just go in and kill. And we were playing on Ultimate in that one, right? I mean, when I say kill, I mean pacify.
Like kill it as Spider-Man.
Yes, kill it as Spider-Man and pacify these enemies. I almost said victims.
Well, but they are after this.
They are. It's true. But in this, it took me a little while to kind of get used to the fact that, okay, now we only kind of have 4 slots to pick from in terms of special moves and 4 kind of gadgets to kind of pick from on a day-to-day. What it eventually allowed me to do, though, is just create some of the most insane and messy combos ever. And I say messy in like the best way possible. Like it was just like chaos that was organized. And it was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun. Something that I think this game did a really good job of introducing as well, because we talk about people that are getting hurt. You've introduced this element now where when you're solving a crime or solving a big issue that's happening, people will be like, hey man, I'm still kind of hurt, bro. I'm bleeding out. And you're like, well, you know what, man? Let me take you to the nearby hospital. And I was like, oh, this reminded me of like the PS2 era Spider-Man games, where it felt there was a lot more interaction with the civilians in the city. So you'd pick them up, you'd give them whiplash, I'm assuming, as you're swinging through. They're probably more
They're
hurt
throwing
now.
Up everywhere.
Oh,
They're
everywhere.
throwing up everywhere. I was going
through trees.
loops everywhere. I was like I was going up the top of buildings and jumping down with them.
I'd crash into the buildings like while I was, oh, sorry, and just bump their head. But it's cool. Like they added these
Spider-Man experience.
Exactly. That, you know, you asked for a ride, I'm giving it to you for free, you better not complain. But they've added these really cool elements in the game. So while initially, and I think it might be for some people as well when they're playing the game, it might feel a bit slow, the combat and action, you get really, really fast at it, you get really, really quick at it, and it's just that retraining of the brain that you kind of have to do that I really, really liked. I do miss some of the gadgets from the first game. I do miss some things that the first game really
Impact
had.
Web.
Impact Web.
I miss a lot.
And they kind of have that in this game. It's just not as
it's
not
like a big bomb of a web. Like
no,
does.
but I mean,
like
even if you upgrade
of sorts.
Right, if you upgrade the web shooter all the way to like the end, like one of them is like, oh yeah, it'll impact web to those people. Yes, but I kind of miss having some of those elements. But then you have things like the grabber that are kind of web grabber that I brought that immediately for me. And I think if you buy the deluxe edition of the game, it gives it to you early in the game as well. It is like my favorite tool. Like I use it every time. And as you kept upgrading it and the more things it kept adding, I was like, this is so cool. I'm going to keep using the web grabber this, web grabber that, web grabbing everywhere.
Very Ratchet and Clank, right? Like it reminded me, like the gadgets this time around feel a lot more Ratchet and Clank because like you said, like you hold R1 and you could choose like triangle, circle, X, or square, and then you're going to use one of those gadgets. And then what a lot of the time what I ended up doing was just mashing all of them when you get into a situation when there's a lot of people and people are being sucked together. There is like electricity going off. There's concussive blasts going off. It's just like Shay said, it's chaos, but it's so fun to watch. You're like, man, like this is so cool to see. I just love the craziness of this. And then you add on that layer of the symbiote abilities with Peter, or the electricity or the upgraded Venom with Miles on the L1. So yeah, like Shay said, it's very much a retraining of your brain when it comes to using the abilities. But as you play more, you'll just become just an absolute Spider-Man assassin.
Yeah. I think one of my biggest issues with this, though, and I'm not sure if it's the same with you guys, I found that the regeneration time for a lot of these tools and specials, I think, was a little bit too long, even as I kept upgrading them. Like I'd be like, I'd go into a fight so quickly after and I had nothing. I was like empty and I was like, oh shoot, I gotta play this fight a little differently, which I think is kind of a nice thing because then you're now more playing on the defensive and you're trying to let everything kind of regen, aka your health, your focus bar, and everything. And as those are continuing to increase, it adds a new layer to the fight. But sometimes I kind of just want to go in and just be like, I got everything, bam, 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 and then just go from there.
Yeah, 100%. Anthony, how about yourself? How did you find the gameplay this time around?
I had a little bit of a challenge of just remembering I had to hold L1 or R1 and then the corresponding buttons with it. I know it's something trivial, but it just, I would be pressing L1 but meaning to press R1 and then
I mean,
a
in the
square
chaos
or
of
a
everything,
triangle,
right?
and you're like, why isn't this working? It's like, oh, I'm pressing the wrong. And there's a little bit of a learning curve, but other than that, it feels like, remember when we played Ghost of Tsushima and it just took a really long time to become super powerful, and once you get there, it's like, holy, I feel very, very powerful. That's the same that I felt. Yeah, and that's how I felt with Spider-Man. Like once you learn and you find your rhythm with the controls as well as all these new abilities and suits that you're going to interact with and different characters, you have this groove of things, and you find your balance of fighting and hitting certain characters in a certain way and using I would say planning your fights before you even get into them. Before you would just go in, like I was planning a lot, like, okay, I'll hit this because I know he's a brute, and brutes are harder to fight compared to just the regular dude. But if that dude has like a weapon, that's another. So you kind of go into this orchestrating what ability to use on what characters so you can knock them out easier, so then you can go into fighting the other guys. But yeah, it is organized chaos. It's a lot of crazy things that are happening on screen that you just feel like, who's coding this? Who's programming this? This feels so intense that you're amazed that the game is not completely crashing on you. And I experienced a couple of crashes, but we're talking about at times 30-20 characters on screen, you as a symbiote Spider-Man, and you have like this symbiote Venom going around you, and you're shooting it out while the city's still moving. There's lights, there's cars passing by, there's objects that are around you. That's a lot to program and to code and to make sure it works every single time. And I think there's going to be a patch that comes out when this game comes out.
Well, we've had 2 patches since we've started playing this game. I have not had any crashes because I did have 2 crashes before we got any patch for the game. And then once the first patch came out, I didn't have any issues, and then this new patch, I haven't experienced any issues either.
Yeah, I had one crash only, and then the patches came out and nothing else.
Yeah, so it's interesting seeing that. But like speaking of gadgets though, and being strategic, like you were saying, Anthony, Weblines is something that I used. Strategic. I used Webline. I like literally, if you look at, I remember like showing you screenshots, Shay, of just like, it looks like I was like just like a hitman, because my Weblines were just filled with people that I did like web takedowns.
Dude,
on.
You were like
so
living in Juarez.
Yeah, so like literally, like if you've seen Sicario, there's just literally you look up to the ceiling of where I was playing, and there's like 20 guys just hanging down.
Were you like a spider in your past life? Were you a spider in your past life?
Because it looks so cool. Because it looks like
you
a big
had
web.
So many webs going everywhere.
I was like, I literally would do bases, like different bases in the game. I'd be like, how can I take down this whole base silently? And I was able to, and I literally took down like 25 people just all dangling down. And if I feel so bad for the cops who came here, because they just must be mortified at what just happened. I'm like, why did Spider-Man leave all of these people up in the ceiling rafters?
If the webs haven't dissolved yet, right? I mean, we gotta remember that they could have just
fingers
fallen
crossed
to the ground.
They didn't dissolve. Yeah, fingers crossed they didn't dissolve. I did want to quickly mention too, we are all playing on performance mode, which is 60 frames per second. It's 4K. It looks gorgeous. So we didn't have the performance RT mode. That was not enabled as of yet, as of patches, but we do know there is going to be a day 1 patch for the game. So stay tuned for whatever patch is coming out. But we know, we did mention crashes in the game. I did want to touch on any other technical issues or glitches. I was pretty glitch free in my experience of the game. I did have some experiences where I somehow fell under the map when I was opening up like a tech box. I was like, oh, I'm under the map. And when I tried to get out, I got stuck in a building. And it's funny because the same thing happened to me in Miles Morales, where I was just stuck in the building. I just had to reload my last checkpoint. But pretty glitch free for me. Any issues for you guys that you experienced?
I experienced a couple of crashes. Just to the like just it could happen during a cinematic, or like Daniel getting trapped in a building, which I also got trapped in a building. But the cool thing about this game is it really puts you back to where you were. And I never experienced a glitch where I was in a mission. It usually was happening when I was just free roaming. I would get stuck, or it would just, the error screen would pop up, like something happened. Like I think one of them was I was changing my costume or my suit, and all of a sudden it crashed. So things like that, like the really cool thing about Insomniac, and I guess how they built this game, is if it does happen, like you are going to end up exactly where you were. And I think it will usually happen while you're free roaming rather than actually being a story, which could be a hassle. But again, I think a lot of these patches are going to fix up the crashes. They were never an annoyance because I was so captivated by the game that I didn't care if there was a crash. I'm like, okay, I'll just go back and I'll replay it because I'm having so much fun. Like there was never a part where I was like, fudge, I have to go and do this and do that to get to that point to start over. Like it never feels like that. It never feels like it's like a mission to get back to where you were, or even just any of the missions. It never feels like it's a long journey. It really feels like if you had to restart a mission, it's going to be fun and you're going to enjoy it
because it's so fun, right? And Shay, sorry, you had something to say.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, from my side, I had one crash during the cinematic, and I was like, oh, that, like, it happened also kind of late in the game for me, that I was like, wow, I guess I was due for one. And then in terms of like I had one that I know, Anthony, you had as well, where we had a bunch of bad guys just kind of stuck in a car, and I was like, they're not coming out and the mission's not progressing for me, so I just kept hitting them from outside the car. And I think, Anthony, you got like 1,000 combo, I got like a couple hundred, and I was like, maybe there's a trophy for this somewhere. Maybe I'll get like 100%. Like a combo trophy or something. And then I think I got hit by a train one time, and I was trying to test the fall damage, which is now a setting you can turn on in the game.
It is a setting to test that,
and I was like standing on the train tracks, and then when the train hit me, I got sucked in the train and got stuck in it. But eventually, like it let me go out. So I only probably had to do like a restart checkpoint like once or twice at the most. And I was very surprised as to how polished this game was, because we got it really early. We got it like a month before the game comes out.
Basically, yeah. We had a long time to talk about it and to really let it marinate with us and get the platinum, which we know a lot of our friends who are playing the game right now for review have all done the platinum. Speaking of the platinum trophy, the web wings in this game really do change everything. The traversal with them, you're going to be flying everywhere. You could zip around like crazy. And
I barely swung.
Barely swung around, right? Like you would just launch off. And again, as you upgrade your skills, so Peter has his own skill tree, Miles has his own skill tree, and then they have a shared skill tree. So as you upgrade that, and as you upgrade the different traversal, you are just going to be flying across New York. And there's literally a trophy for going from the financial district to Astoria, which is a really long way to go. But once you start getting used to the wind tunnels and gliding, like you will just fly all across the entire map of New York City, and you will get from one point to the other, and it will just feel incredible.
Yeah, when we saw that trophy in the beginning, and I think this is like when the early part of the game that we were at, we're like, oh, that's impossible. We're not gonna be able to do it.
There's no way.
And then just a couple of like upgrades later, when you kind of see the map and the layout, you're like, this is the easiest thing. Like I was going from points of the map to the very back of the map without ever touching the ground or having to swing or whatever, because you find so many methods in this game that allow you to do that. One thing I also noticed, and I think, Anthony, you touched upon this back when we did like our breakdown of the footage and everything that we kind of had from LA, was the camera angles in this game felt a bit different. And I really felt that while swinging, they almost had this kind of like anamorphic lens kind of look to it. Like you felt like the camera was like gliding with you, and you really, really, really feel that in this game. I was like, wow, they really expanded on how the lensing looks, the way the cinematics look, and how the swinging looks as well. One thing I really want to touch on as well is that we talk about some of these side stories, and they're so fantastic in this game. They're so relevant and so important to how the game is going to be playing out. They also are going to make you cry a lot. I think I have teared up a lot playing this game based on just side stories. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be a really big thing that people kind of encounter when they're playing this game. So have tissues ready, because you'll need it for a couple reasons.
I'm glad you brought that up. And just like Jacinda said, this optional content in this game, it's optional, but it is essential that you play it. It really is, because those are some of where the best stories from this game, you're going to get them from the side missions. That you have a game that you have an incredible story, but you have side missions that are just as incredible. So you're playing it, and it just feels like everything's just ebbing and flowing through one another, because it just feels like everything you're doing is adding to the story that you're playing. It's really, really special. There's so much side con to do. There's so much collectibles to get done. In the first game we had backpacks. What else did we have in the first game that we really had to collect? Was it just backpacks in the first game that we were collecting?
Well, we were doing the photos. You're doing the backpacks.
Yeah, the photos, backpacks. Yeah,
and then they had the secret photos, which I don't know if this game has. I don't think it has it. But this game, the photos are really cool, and there's a much more interesting element to the photos in this game. It's not just like, oh, take photos. There's a lot cooler. There's a bit of more of a story to it, I'd say. And we have the spider bots.
Yeah, the spider bots. You have other things that we're not going to spoil, obviously, for you, because there's a lot more. There's a lot of spoilers to this game, so we don't want to spoil any other collectibles. Just know that there's a lot of collectibles in this game. They all have great payoffs. You're most likely going to get a suit for everything that you're going to do. And it will tell you. I like that when you're starting a new side mission, you're like, hey, you're going to be rewarded with this suit, which is really cool that the game tells you. Everything you need is in the menus. One thing that I did miss a lot from the menus, and I know, Shay, you were a big fan of this as well, too, was the benchmarks. Benchmarks were not there. We had a list of stuff that we were putting together, Shay, of stuff that we knew was in the first game, but not
I have my list right here. Do you want me to?
Please.
Yeah. So we have
one
of the things that we discussed was no benchmarks, which I don't think a lot of people used in the first game. But what it brought for myself, and I'm sure you guys as well, was replayability. Like even when I was just playing the game, Spider-Man 1,
and he's just like, no,
you didn't care about them.
Those.
Sorry, just
I didn't even think about them when I was playing it because I was having so much fun. I'm like,
yeah,
who cares about benchmarks?
Who wants to do math?
It's more so
Shay,
about
Mr. Mathematician.
After the game is done, it's when you're done the story, because one of the biggest gripes that I kind of have, and I know that we talked about this as well, is because there's no additional XP that you're gaining. Once you kind of hit the level cap in this game, that's it. You don't gain anything else after that. Also, you can't really replay a lot of these. Like in the first game, you had all the Fisk tower areas and you would go hideouts, and then you had the demon hideouts and everything. You could go back and replay those, and they were kind of like your brawl modes or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, your combat modes, like Arkham has the challenge maps and stuff, right? Yeah,
exactly that. This game doesn't really have that. So when we're done the story, there's only one thing kind of left on the map that you can replay, and it's very character specific, which is great, but it's not enough, and I think that it reduces some of that replayability after, because benchmarks really had me coming back and going like, okay, maybe I can just complete these. It was like this weird thing in my head that I wanted to do, and then the replaying of all the things that are specific in this game, I wish we had. Also, I wish we could still keep going up in XP, even though it really wasn't making much of a difference. It was still kind of nice that it was there. It really made earning feel special.
What was nice too is that you also took that with you. So if you're someone who replayed the game a lot, I replayed I've beaten Spider-Man like 4 times on PS4, then I think I've beaten Remastered like 3 times.
Yeah.
And every time that I've replayed it, I would start a new game plus from the previous save. So you would keep upgrading. So by the time you'd go back to play whatever new game plus that you were doing, you were so powerful. Now there's no new game plus. We've seen that hopefully this is something that will be added soon to the game. So there's no timeline or anything like that yet. But it'll be great because I'm so excited to go back and replay this game and see whatever additions come with New Game Plus. Anything else in the game that, while we're talking about some things that aren't there from the first game, let's look a little bit more about some criticisms. What are some other things in this game that did not resonate with you guys as much? Be it character stories, issues with the gameplay itself. Anthony, do you want to start us off?
One thing that comes to mind that I remember strictly from the first game, which I really liked, was that the suits that you got had specific powers to them that would show off, like, okay, this is completely different. And maybe it was a lot of work for Insomniac to do. But the suits that you get in this game, which look fantastic, they look super detailed, and like you can almost look at the threads in the suits, and it really feels like they're wearing cloth or they're wearing whatever suit you unlock. They really feel real, and when you see them in the game, they look just fantastic because you'll see them in cinematics and all that. But I really like the idea that, okay, this suit has a specific power that I can use that makes it more enjoyable. It makes it more special that the suit is unlocked for me, and there's something extra that I get rather than just unlocking a suit, which is what kind of like it feels like in this game. Another thing that I really wish they thought of is just, even though the score is really well done and it feels like when you're swinging your Spider-Man, there's points in the game where I feel like, Miles Morales, different generation of Spider-Man, it would make sense to have his own music or music that's embedded into his suit where you can maybe listen to,
because he's a producer in the game, right? Like maybe music that he's made.
Exactly. Or just like have like this hip hop vibe that, okay, like when I put on my Spider-Man suit, I got headphones in the suit that I can listen to music and I can control it. Maybe it's a little too much, but something very similar to what Grand Theft Auto does, where they'll have like a certain radio station or whatever. They could have incorporated with Miles, because I just feel like he's so grounded to music and the culture that he comes from in New York. I love the whimsical Spider-Man score that you get. But sometimes when you're just roaming the city, I just want to listen to some hip hop, because it feels like that's what Miles would do when he's swinging. Like he wouldn't just be swinging and not listening to it, because the score is just for us. But I don't feel like Miles would just be swinging without something in his suit or in his ears.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
But other than that, like, I can't think of anything that really, really bothered me, because again, sometimes when you don't have, or you're really good with what you have, you don't think of anything else, because it's just like you can't be the most perfect game in the world. But I think like those two things and were like my biggest complaints. And maybe character, like the facial designs of some of these humans, because I really don't like their faces. But other than that,
Venom's face though was perfect. I think Venom's adaptation was probably. I spent so much time in photo mode just looking and being like, oh my god! Like you see like the liquid and like the goop coming out of his mouth. It's
Kraven,
incredible,
fantastic,
phenomenal. Yeah,
Miles is fantastic in the suit. I like him in his human form. Peter, I have trouble envisioning this face and that haircut as Peter Parker, just because there's something about his face, like you just want to punch. You notice that? Like I don't know. I have that.
I think maybe that's why villains want to fight him all the time.
Well, he's always wearing a mask.
They know it's underneath.
But I like Harry.
Luckily he's wearing a mask. We don't
I like Harry.
Harry's phenomenal. Yeah,
fantastic. Norman's great.
Harry looks like Henry Golding, man. I'm telling you, he looks like Henry Golding.
Yeah.
Like I think we were talking about it. Like a lot of these characters, because they're being built, they're designed right. Like they don't. Some of these designs, like for instance, Miles doesn't look like his mother or father or uncle. It just looks like the actor who's playing him. So something to keep in mind is when you're building someone,
Jeter.
And even when they're and I'm approaching this as like someone who's watched films. And
Nadji Jeter, sorry, Nadji Jeter is the performance capture of Miles.
You want some similarity between the parents and the character, because it just makes more sense. Like, okay, like they look like each other. Like you can design that. Sometimes you can't get that in a film, but you got to find it. So things like that just little touches. I know they're just, little things, but it just makes it more believable. It makes it more like, holy, they spent time researching and designing someone who looks like the mother and father and the uncle, and this, making this really feel like a family, than just having someone who's just looks like their character in real life in this game.
I'm totally there with you. What's also, because you mentioned the suits. I know we don't have suit abilities, but the suits that we do get, and the fact that we could not only just craft suits, but unlock variations of the colors. There is so much in this game that you're just going to get lost in. And I think this collection of suits is the best that we've ever had. I am not missing anything from the first game. I'm not missing anything from Miles Morales, because I think the best suits from those games have made it into this game. And then the new suits that you get, I think just really take it from there. We don't have the deluxe edition, so I'm sure if we had the deluxe edition, we had the additional 20 plus suits, we'd be even more just having an embarrassment of riches of suits. Shay, anything else that you want to criticize about the game before we get to our platinum journey, and then we could get some questions from you, the audience?
Yeah, we have some great questions. I mean, I think Anthony, you touched upon it really well. Is I missed the suit abilities, because even though they kind of like didn't really affect too much of what the suit is, it added some personality and character, and didn't just make the suits aesthetic, which in this game they're mostly just aesthetic, but I think they did a really good job of embedding the new suits into the gameplay really, really well, because there's moments in cinematics where obviously you still see the suit on that you're wearing, and the situation that's occurring is actually affecting that part of the suit. It doesn't just kind of feel like it's affecting like a base layer, you know, the advanced suit or whatever it is.
Suit damage and everything, right? Like we see that across all suits. All suits have web wings, which is amazing. There's a lot of things that they've taken into account of, like that makes sense. You're wearing this suit, so it's going to reflect that way. That's really cool.
And the one thing I noticed, even so, you remember Miles' suit with the cat, in the back. Even the cat gets damaged. It's just a dead cat in the back.
Sometimes. Oh, the cat
sometimes
gets hurt.
It's just dead. Like you just
roll. That's not a very powerful cat.
No, man. He's not. No. Well, he's not really Spider-Man. He's just a cat with a mask. He doesn't have any spider powers.
The cats have 9 lives. That's why
there was a funny moment where you remember the sequence that we saw in the trailer where it was where you play as in the trailer. This is not a spoiler. Where you play as Miles and you're chasing after the boats on the water. So I was wearing my Spider-Man cat suit. So when I did end up in the water, I spent a lot of time in that water. That cat drowned. I'm not gonna lie, that cat drowned, and it was just trying. It was doing this. You know how it pops out? And it's like,
yeah. I have a separate health bar for the cat.
I was doing that mission. I was having like such an intense conversation with the character, and the cat kept coming out of my backpack doing that, and I was like trying to have a serious conversation with what's happening in the game, but the cat kept making me laugh, so that was just so funny.
One thing I do like is the reoccurring characters that relate to the city that are part of New York that you've seen in the first one and the second one, in Miles, and now you see in the second one. It's just, it makes it feel like, oh, so very familiar. Like, oh, I remember you. You were like the cat Spider-Man's kid. Like that was your cat. Like, oh, and you're now playing music. You're doing all these things. So it's a lot of those familiarities that just makes it feel like, man, I feel like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah.
Something that I really want to touch on really quickly before we kind of jump into questions or platinum, wherever we're going to next, is the events of Spider-Man Miles Morales really do play a big part in this game. And it's, if you have the ability to play that game before you get to play this one, highly recommend it, because there's elements that really are important. They lay a lot of the groundwork. That game is not just DLC or throwaway that some people like to say a lot. That game is really, really important to telling this story as well, because it dives so deep into it. There's moments in this game where you're like, well, why is this happening? Or why am I doing this? It's like, well, it was actually answered in Miles Morales. So I highly recommend it.
Speaking of answering, questions, let's answer some of yours, because I think a lot of our platinum journey will be answered in some of these questions are being asked. So Shay, I know you've compiled a bunch of the questions that were sent to us.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone who sent it to us on socials. So let's start answering some of your questions. And again, any questions that you ask about spoilers, we're not answering.
Kind of gone through the questions, and anything that is a spoiler, I did not include, but maybe we can include them during our spoiler conversation. So definitely keep on the lookout for that. One of the first questions that we kind of have here is from Spider-Man 2 Countdown. Shout out to, you've shared a lot of our stuff too on Twitter, so thank you so much for that. Is how long is the main story and side quests? I think we kind of all had around 30 hours roughly, with everything included.
30 to do platinum. So and that's me including doing all of the side missions and everything. So I popped that platinum trophy pretty much after I beat the game. Yeah. It was about 32, 33 hours.
Yeah.
But I am assuming if you mainline the game, most probably around 20.
20 flat?
Like 20 if you just mainline story.
If you mainline story. Sorry. Yeah, I think you could do the story in like 19, 20 hours easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's, again, a lot more there. What could be improved? Does the story set up for future titles or spinoffs? I think that's pretty easy to say that we'll always have more Spider-Man. There'll be more Spider-Man in this world.
Definitely. I think there's lots of stories to come. What can be improved?
Yeah.
I think, some of the things that we said, like, I don't know if they're going to add in benchmarks, but I'd love to replay missions. I'd love to be able to have bases that I could go and just have even a horde mode where I could just be like, doing crimes around the city are great, but just give me a challenge map where I could just do it stealth or do like just flat out combat, because this game is so fun to play. You want to keep playing to it instead of just kind of finding crime throughout the city. I just want everyone to swarm me and me just beat the crap out of everybody.
I think one thing, sorry, that we forgot to touch upon, and it's not really a spoiler, but the MJ missions in this game are so much better. Like if you found them annoying in the
Vastly
first
improved.
game, if you were like, oh, I hate doing these missions, you're not going to feel the same way when you play this game. They're really good. Next question we have here is from Ender3. From your review on the game, do you think this has potential to win Game of the Year? I mean, Anthony, you kind of mentioned in the beginning, Daniel, you mentioned in the beginning that this is at least Game of the Year right now for you guys. I feel I can say the same thing. Like I can't wait to replay it. I can't wait to replay it.
I haven't played a lot of games this year, so I can't. For me, it really makes an impact in my game play this year for sure. But I'm very curious to hear from others whose job is to play games throughout the whole year and actually put that in that criteria. Again, it's very subjective because I can say, yeah, this is Game of the Year for me, but there's 100 other people that will probably say, oh, there's Baldur's Gate and so this and that and yada yada yada, which 100%
I love yada
could
yada
be.
yada. One of my favorites.
But like for me, because I approach games as a cinematic medium, it's fantastic. Like I haven't experienced this at all, and I also biased because I like Spider-Man, and the game is a very good game. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no issues with it. You're gonna have fun. So that's why I hate about Game of the Year. It's all like
It's like movie of the year, right? It's all subjective, right?
Subjective.
It's
right?
your personal taste.
But for me, yeah, Game of the Year.
This is what I will say. Spider-Man 2 is what is the game Insomniac has been building their entire career to make. Because if you've played Ratchet and Clank, you played the last Spider-Man, you've played their previous games, so much of what Spider-Man 2 does incorporates what they've done before. And this is, I think, Insomniac now on that level of being, you know what, we're in the conversation with Naughty Dog. We're in the conversation with Sony Santa Monica. We belong in that conversation for Game of the Year because Spider-Man 2 deserves it.
I think it's more of like we are in that conversation now of iconic studios, and even though they were, but it's just like they're just putting themselves up there with all those studios, and I think that's more important than Game of the Year. I think it's like when you're in a field with Naughty Dog and with
Sony
Santa Monica, you're just like, you create really great video games that have a timelessness to it, and
even
that's
Sucker Punch.
Punch. That's just that's so much more than having Game of the Year. Some studios take a really long time to get to that part of their legacy. And I think Insomniac is hitting that legacy now. Like they were making games that are going to be timeless and remembered, rather than just being, oh, I played it and then I throw it away.
Yeah, like one of the things that I mentioned in my first reaction was this is a culmination of everything that they've worked on. This is Insomniac's game of their career. Like this is if everything has led to this point, they've incorporated everything that they've ever worked on in this game. So is it Game of the Year? It is for us. Next question here we have is from Bojo214. Who is more fun to play, Peter or Miles, in terms of everything like swinging, combat, and story-wise? Whose overall arc is better? I'll say from my end here, I enjoy playing and swinging and fighting as Miles a lot more. I think just the Venom capabilities that he has, the electric power, is just so cool. And there's like this... I was going to quote that IGN thing, but I'm not going to do it. He has like this just maneuver that he does in his style of fighting. It's like he's young, he's carefree, he doesn't care. It's just kind of like he's going with the flow.
Were you going to say that exaggerated swagger line?
Swagger of a black teen? What was it again?
Yeah. I don't know if it was IGN or GameSpot. It was one
sorry.
of them.
My apologies. Whoever
it's
said
very
it.
specific. It's very specific.
Yeah. It was too specific. I was like, great, buddy,
relax. I was like, oh, okay.
But it has that.
Yeah, I'm there with you, Shay. I would say Miles is more fun to play as. Peter has the symbiote abilities, which are really fun. And Miles is more fun to play as.
Peter's a better arc.
Yeah, but also I think Peter has better suits.
Peter has better suits. Yes, he does.
Because of the longevity of Peter Parker in comic books and in the mediums, I think Peter has a better suits, but Miles is more fun to play as. So I'll switch between them.
Miles' suits are too Gen Z for me.
They're Gen Z.
Too Gen Z.
Girl shoots back in my day.
Well, I mean, like you look at Miles, he's only been around the last not even 15 years.
Not even,
right?
yeah.
So, pure Gen Zer, man. That's how I look. But no, I love playing as Miles more than I love playing as Peter, as Spider-Man, like without the symbiote, because I think when I mentioned, his powers are not just strength and being able to, do backflips and all that. He has these venom kisses where he can touch you and then boom, it explodes, and he can be invisible and he can do all those things. And the amount of electricity that goes through him just showcases how enormous his power level can be. While Peter, he has to use mechanical things to kind of get very close to his counterpart's power strength. But I also love swinging as Miles because he has that carefree, I'm just swinging back. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
I'm just going
He looks
here. And he looks cool. Like, he just has that carefree attitude. Well, Peter has the iconic Spider-Man when he poses and he's swinging. I enjoy Miles more, but when it comes to Symbiote, it's going to be Peter because of just all these extra things that you can do.
Yeah, Peter has like a lot these different elements in it for sure. Next one we have here is from Edibiri Tosin. Will it be more challenging than previous Spider-Man games? I think we kind of did touch upon this. We did find it a little bit more challenging in a good way, really. It's like I never got frustrated or threw my controller. It was like,
and you have a parry ability this time around, right?
Parry ability too. Yeah.
So there's a lot more to parrying attacks and things like that. So there's more to the fights that you're having, and there's, especially with the hunters and characters you'll meet later on, they'll get more challenging for sure.
The Jurassic W asks, is it good? Please tell me it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
I think so.
It's really good.
I think so.
Century OG asks a couple questions here. Does it take better advantage of the DualSense in the previous two games? 100%. There's a setting in this, I think it was called, what was it? Experimental? No, we were looking at it and we kept misreading it. It was like, the setting of the DualSense was like whatever can make you immersed in the game. I think it was
it's like nothing normal and then extreme.
Yeah, it was like something with E, like experimental or experiential, I think.
Probably experiential.
Oh my god. It, like, you feel footsteps, you feel raindrops, you feel everything in this controller.
And then the speaker as well too, right? Like it'll be like, oh, it's really well used, the DualSense.
They did. And also a lot of the mini games while you're doing, or quick time events, are so reliant on how the triggers are being pushed or pulled. And you see that in some of the trailers and the footage that's come out. But yeah, really, really well done use of the, like, I think this is the best use of the DualSense.
Insomniac knows how to utilize it, because I remember with Ratchet and Clank, like when you were pressing those triggers on the different types of guns, it just felt like you were
roller skates. Remember the roller skates where you feel like you have to charge them up?
Yeah. I was playing it, I don't know, I think I was talking to you, Daniel, and I could hear the motor in my controller working overtime. I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I play this game more, this controller is not going to work anymore, because I just feel like the mechanical gears that are happening. Though. It just felt like, holy, the everything, you can almost hear it sound like a supercharger.
Yeah. I think it was totally on purpose, because that felt like it was part of the game, like the intensity of the sound of it. It felt like that moment, that's what I'd be hearing.
When you are a symbiote and you go into, what is it, symbiote? Surge. You just hear like your subconscious symbiote talking to you, and it's just like, it's so
like the
creepy.
Venom talk.
Oh, dude. And it's coming from that little microphone, right? Like, but it's so, the way they pan it, the way they like orchestrate the sound wave from it, it feels like it's behind you. It does a really good job from such a small speaker.
Are the suits from the first game identical or slightly upgraded? People had issues with how the Raimi suit looked. Is that now fixed? I didn't know people had issues with the Raimi suit.
I guess like the suits look the best they've ever looked, I think, in this game. So higher resolution, and I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But everything that it's there are some adjustments to suits from the first game. So again, your miles will vary on that. Your miles will vary.
Your favorite suit, guys? Intended. If you can pick one suit,
I can't, because it's spoilery.
Like for me, the moment I got the Superior Spider-Man suit, which has like the black spider and the, like, just the eyes were more narrow, and Superior Spider-Man was the Doc Ock version of Peter's conscious, or Doc Ock's conscious.
Doc Ock in Peter's body.
His suit looks fantastic because it just looks stealthy and it looks really, really good. So I spent a lot of time with that suit. but I want to know what your favorite suit is if it's not spoilery.
I can't say both of mine are spoilery. So in the spoiler discussion, I will bring that up.
Yeah, but I will say I loved using the advanced suit 2.0, but with the black instead of the blue. It looked dope. I played most of the game with that because I love the big white Insomniac spider, but with the red and then having the black as the secondary color instead of the blue, choice.
Love it, love it. Last question we have here. We touched upon a lot of this as well. How is Kraven as a villain, and is the story just as enthralling as the first game? I will say Kraven is fantastic, and we've already said that. And I'd say the story is more enthralling than the first game.
I would say Sony Pictures made a really good choice moving Kraven till next year, because if you had 2 Kraven stories coming out this month, everyone would be looking at Spider-Man 2 as the definitive version of that character.
But it may have helped that movie's box office, though. Well, maybe we'll get this Kraven.
Maybe.
They don't go get
maybe.
it.
But yeah, Kraven is phenomenal. He's one of the best villains. He's up there with some of the greatest villains you will play in a video game because he's absolutely terrifying, and I cannot wait to play it again. Yeah, this game... I literally, once I started playing this game, I uninstalled Miles Morales and remastered for my PS5 because I'm like, this is the game that I'm going to be replaying now. This is the game that I'm going to be going back to.
One thing that I also kind of want to touch upon is, and I hope this comes down the road in the future at some point. I know that Insomniac has already said that this is not something that they've done, but I hope they do. I wish I could just join a lobby with one of you guys and I can be Spider-Man or you could be Miles and we just swing around and do fights and stuff, because it kind of happens in the game already where you'll go do a crime and like Miles is there or Peter's there and you're like yo and it's like
it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't you want us to be 3 Spider-Man?
Maybe down the road.
Maybe,
you know what I mean? Maybe down the road.
Sometimes games like this just they really want you to focus on the story and the cinematic value that it brings. So
for sure.
Adding a multiplayer kind of takes away from it, but it would be good for the long run, because once you're done this game and you've done the missions, you're just swinging. Like you gotta start a new game again, right? And so adding those things just to keep the gameplay and the longevity of this game makes more sense.
Let's get to our final recommendations. If you couldn't tell over the last hour plus of us discussing
almost 2 hours.
This is too long, man. We're gonna cut it. We're gonna start it. It's gonna say I like it, and then that's gonna end.
I like it, and that's it. Sony's gonna be like, guys, why did we send you the games for review?
You guys didn't say anything.
No, but this is one of my favorite reviews that I think we've ever done. This is the longest we've ever spoken about something in a review, and I think it's warranted. But let's get to our final recommendations. Shahbaz, I'd love for you to start us off.
This game, Spider-Man 2, Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man 2, is a real gem. This is one of the best games I've had the opportunity to play. I felt privileged playing this game. There's so many elements in this game that I just think, wow, I can't wait to go back and play it again, because this is why you buy a PS5. This is what Insomniac has built towards. This is what Sony and PlayStation have built towards to make the most immersive and most captivating game experience that you possibly can have. This game gets all the accolades that it deserves, gets all the love that it deserves. So, real gem.
I am right there with you, Shahbaz. This is a real gem for me. Like I said, I didn't think anything will dethrone Tears of the Kingdom for me this year. I didn't think it was possible to have a game that instantly became one of my all-time favorites. I look at what we've gone in the past. I look at Arkham Asylum, and I look at the jump to Arkham City. This almost makes it feel like Arkham Asylum jumped to Arkham Knight in terms of the abilities, the traversal, everything that you could do in it. Spider-Man 2 is hands down the greatest superhero game ever made. It is one of the coolest games I've ever played. And I am just itching to, now that we've gone to talk about it after all this time, stop recording and start a new game, because I'm just stoked to go back to it. And I cannot wait to hear everyone's stories and have this game just take over the worlds once it comes out on October 20th. Anthony, take us home. Swing us home.
You always want me to bring you guys home, but I always feel like,
you're always on the car though.
I don't want to go home.
I have to have the most iconic, like underlining. You know, this game's great. It's a fantastic game. I loved it. I enjoyed it. My eyes were glued to the screen. I never felt that I was bored. I had so much fun flying around the city. It really makes you feel like you're Spider-Man, and it's probably the best Spider-Man story I've experienced in a either cinematic window like a film or in a video game. And Insomniac really gives fans of the Spider-Man universe a lot. and they give you a lot in this game. There's so much to take away from, and I look at movies and I look at games that give you so much that it's just overbearing. The pacing of this game just sets you up for such a great experience. I really, really love it. I think this is a real gem for me, and I know it's a real gem for you guys. But this is like beyond real gem. This is like super Spider-Man gemstones of the stones of gems. So we got confettis.
It's lots of love from us on the movie podcast. Clearly,
it's great. And all I kept thinking about is I like Spider-Man, but I like fucking Wolverine. And what they give me for Wolverine, it's gonna be so much better. It's gonna be, because Wolverine is he's Canadian, he's my hero. And if I can do what I do with Spider-Man, imagine what we're gonna be able to do with Wolverine. And that's all I kept thinking about. Like, kudos to Insomniac for doing this.
Marvel's Spider-Man 2 releases exclusively on PS5 on October 20th. Thank you to our friends at PlayStation Canada for inviting us to play the game, for inviting us out to LA to play the game, to review it, to have our review out for embargo today. If you're new to the movie podcast, please consider subscribing. Leave a comment below. Let us know what you're most excited for. We have lots more Spider-Man coverage coming your way, so make sure you tune in for everything that we have coming. We're going to have a spoiler discussion in a couple weeks because we want to make sure you all have time to play, to finish the story, to platinum the game, and we're going to talk about everything without holding back. We have a list of a lot of stuff that we want to talk about, so make sure you're following us on socials at The Movie Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. You'll be able to stay up to date with everything we have coming out. We love what we're doing here at the show. We really want to keep making the show for you, so please subscribe, leave us 5 stars if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you find us. We're so glad that you did. So stay tuned for a lot more. That was this time with The Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.